Hello and welcome to Just In. I'm your host, Adriana Lamar, here with Sammy Wells and Tommy Scott. Today's show is brought to you by Delicious Treats and Sweat Athletic Clothing Brand. We will come right back and hit it with Deshaun Watson going to Browns in just a moment. All right, welcome back. So, first topic of the day, let's get into Deshaun Watson heading to Cleveland. Tommy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And if we think back and kind of revisit some of the conversation that we've had earlier, well, not earlier this year, but last year, earlier in the show, we've talked a bit about Deshaun Watson and the legal issues that he was facing, and what the Houston's were doing, and some other issues, in Houston. We've also talked a bit about the Browns and kind of some of the way that the organization and the fan base was reacting to Mayfield. And we kind of touched a little bit on the Odell Beckham situation being in the Browns, or being in Cleveland. And all those kind of wrap up. And I thought when we hit this part of the season where we're going to see the quarterback carousel, we're going to see all the moves that are getting made and the excitement that's going on. Uh, it was really one of those where you could tell in Cleveland there's frustrations there, so they're going to be looking around. But the interesting up and down with Deshaun Watson, because if you remember, this all started with, okay, Cleveland's off the table for Deshaun Watson, right? They're out of the running, and then it was what, a day or two later, it was like, nope, that's where he's going. And so it'd be interesting to find out exactly what happened in the background between those 2 points. Um, and I think based on some of the things that we've heard as far as the demand, or the request for a trade, things like that. You know, I think that kind of maybe came up in there. Um, but when you look at the Browns and the situation where they're in, they wanted to do something. They wanted to shake something up, and but they have Baker Mayfield, who is obviously not a bad quarterback. He's pretty much a quarterback that can go where he needs to go and have success. But they knew that if they're moving on from Mayfield, they need something that's going to be a splash, right? Like, they're not going to move on from Mayfield with Jimmy, right? They're not going to get Garoppolo, bring him in there because, you know, all things considered, you're probably looking at the same level of success and quite possibly the same, maybe not necessarily the same, attitude type issues, but the same level of play, right? Uh, Deshaun Watson, though, brings a little bit more excitement because of his little bit. He's obviously much more mobile, moves around. He's an exciting player to watch. And over the past year, and it kind of seems like a lot of the legal issues, one by one, have started falling off, falling off, and falling off, and not being indicted. So as those came up, it becomes a situation where, yeah, there's some public opinion that has to be considered. But at the end of the day, as our legal system is set up, right? You're innocent until proven guilty. You don't get indicted. It's like, yes, the court of public opinion still stands. It's still there. But let's face it, when you're the Cleveland Browns, you're kind of in a spot where the court of public opinion is already not in your favor because you had lifelong struggles just about. And so you're kind of now saying, okay, well, let's take a shot. Maybe that's the difference maker, getting Deshaun Watson here, where we bring that level of excitement. And maybe with change of scenery, Deshaun Watson coming in needing to kind of rebrand himself, he can come in and make that difference, and not have some of the other issues that come along with, right. um of course, right now we've got that situation where the Browns have Deshaun Watson and they have Baker Mayfield. Now, from what I understand from reading, and whether or not this is the actual case, but from reading about this one, the Browns are in a decent spot with Deshaun Watson, because if something does come up where he's unable to play, right, because of legal issues, things like that, they're not on the hook, right, or they're mostly off the hook. So they're kind of like high risk, or low risk, high reward in that scenario. So the question really becomes in this one: is he going to be available? And right now, everything looks like yes, he'll be available to play. And if he's available to play and we get that out of the way, the question will be is like, how's this going to work out in the long run? And it's like, will the Browns have success with Deshaun Watson? Well, yeah, they will. But is Deshaun Watson going to be enough to really turn the corner from where they're at with Mayfield? I don't think so. Because, a lot of the flack that Mayfield has taken is some of it's on him, right? But some of it's not. It's still a team sport where it's like, Deshaun Watson comes in, definitely changes how you play the game, opens up different things, but it's not a cure all. And so if they look at this as, hey, here's the cure all, here's that final, like, you're gonna plug in the computer and it's gonna work now, that's just not the case, right? It's that's not gonna be how this plays out. It's still John Watson. He was going somewhere. That was just a matter of fact. He was going somewhere. Browns just happened to be the winners of that. And I think part of that too is part of the winners side of that is, well, he's also in a spot where the Browns were the team that, in my opinion, looked the most committed to building a team around him rather than just saying, because the Browns weren't looking to add him to the team per se. They're going to build a team around him, which they need to make sure they do that because they didn't do the best job of that with Mayfield. They got him weapons, but not necessarily weapons that fit with him, right? Um, and so do that with Deshaun Watson, they'll have more success. And especially with right now with the changes, you know, you got the Steelers with Ben retiring, all those things. They're in a spot where they can really start to, do a better job. And, if they move the right places, they can take a hold of that division and kind of hold that division down and make that their division, for a while, right? Because of all the changes that are going on. So I don't, it's one of those like there's risk involved. And it's always interesting to see a team go from a good quarterback to a good quarterback, in hopes that that makes the difference. But, right now, the question that the Browns looked at, I think, was when they look at the changes in their division, the big one with, basically the changing of the guard in Pittsburgh, struggles that Baltimore has had, they consider all of those things and they look at the play that they've had with Mayfield and with the team. I think they kind of looked at it and said, you know what, if we have what we have and we know what that looks like, and we assume that these changes over here in the rest of the division are going to stick, we still don't feel like we stack up very favorable against that. And so we want to make a change. And if you're, they're kind of at that crossroads with Mayfield. So, there's the biggest splash on the market right there, especially when you have guys like when Aaron Rodgers decided to stay in Green Bay, that was a shock. And then when you had Russell Wilson out of Seattle but going to Denver, that kind of shook things up where now the quarterback game's a different market. And when you're the Browns, where it's like you kind of have everything to lose and everything to gain at the same time, you're gonna look for, especially with those two big names off the table, you're gonna look for the big shocker, and that's Deshaun Watson. The only other big shocker that would be in play right now is, with the reported interest teams are having with Kaepernick, that would be the other big shocker, but that's obviously because of the distance since the last time he played, bigger risk setting, right? Because it's still football. But it's just one of those like it's either going to be a win-win or a lose-lose. There's no like gray area on this one. Either you look like a genius or you're going to look like a moron. That's just the way
Yeah.
that this one goes. But look at the success Cleveland has had. They've had success, but it's not been big success, and they're kind of in that spot where it's like, I think they just feel like they've ran the Mayfield train as far as it's going to go, and they want to shake it up and find out what's new. And it's really not a knock on Mayfield, but I think the team is going to have some struggles in the sense of once they said we were looking, he wanted out. He was like, "Hey, it's time for me to move on because what you guys don't want me here, so why do I want to be here?" Right? It's like if you're not fully behind me, I want to go somewhere where the folks are fully behind me. So that is my take on it.
Sam, where do your thoughts fit in?
Okay, well, first I want to address as far as the allegations for Deshaun Watson. Now, there are certain sport analysts and moderators out there that are already drawing a public opinion that he is guilty, guilty already, and we need to stop that because he has not been found guilty. Found guilty. Nine of the cases have been dismissed. He has 13 more. And that, as Tommy said, you're innocent until proven guilty. And for the simple fact that there has been a history when it comes to black males in cases of sexual allegation. And um, the person was innocent. I can introduce Brian Banks. I could say Brian Banks was a listener, and then there was also a. We can go back all the way to 1955 with Emmett Till. Let's just hold back and chill and wait until the investigation is done, and then let's not draw public opinion of Deshaun Watson is guilty. Now, the second thing is that this is a good trade for Cleveland because they're actually getting a good quarterback. I'm just wondering if Deshaun Watson been out of football for a year, so I'm wondering if it's going to take him a few plays, a few times just to be in there in the game, just to get back to his usual way of play. I mean, being out for a year, it can hamper your. I'm sure it can hamper your skills or whatever. Um, I
Sometimes, I
think
mean,
that.
remember Michael Vick was away for a while. When he came back on the field,
But,
it was like a grenade going off. Where it was like, how's Michael Vick gonna? Oh, okay. No, he's just gonna come
well,
back as Michael Vick. Okay.
okay, and I'm just saying that I'm just
Because,
worried
no,
about
I
how
get you.
he's going to come out.
I'm just saying.
How
I'm just saying the positive side of it.
Well, there, yeah. I mean, if he's still going to be up, still going to be able to do what he's been doing since Houston. He's coming to a good roster. He has a good offensive line. He still has his two backs, Hunt and Chubb, and they still have a decent defense. So, I mean, Browns fans should be happy. As far as for Baker Mayfield, I think that his time is up in Cleveland. Um, Everybody can see it. Um he only took the time to be humble once he found out that they were looking for another quarterback. Throughout the whole situation, his years in Cleveland, he has never been humble. He has always went after the um, media or reporters or the fans stating that it's your fault and it's your fault this and that, and now it has come back to him now where he's going to either be cut from the Browns or he's going to be traded. Either way, he's not that stadium's no longer his home now. I'm just wondering how his progressive commercials are going to go now. Maybe they're going to shoot it from his house and not on the Browns stadium. But hey, he made he made it. He the way that he had handled the way he has handled his time in Cleveland. I can see the reason why that the Browns want to get rid of him because they are sick of them. They're sick of him. They're tired of him. You want to carry a chip on your shoulder all the time, but you want to carry a chip with the ownership and everybody else, the fans and whoever you want to blame other than yourself. Hey, this is exactly how it's going to end up. This is exactly how you're going to end up. And now there's nobody that wants to even trade for a first round pick for him. Browns have been trying to find a trade for him. Nobody wants to trade for him because, hey, you know what? Your attitude goes a long way. Skills go a long way too, but your skills have not been showing. So if you had a better attitude, I would have thought you would have been on a team already or had a
I don't know
trade.
about that, man. I don't know. See, and here's my thing. I don't begrudge Mayfield's attitude. They brought him into a shit team in a shit town. Sorry, it is. Everybody that I know from Cleveland, they say this ain't lit. I know people that born and raised in Cleveland. When they go back to visit, they stay 5 hours away. They drive to Cleveland. They say hi. They hang out. They drive 5 hours
Say
back to where
hi.
they were staying. So, like, let's not pretend like I'm saying something that people there don't feel. The town has been rocked and ravaged by economic troubles and struggles. They dumped a ton of money into revitalizing downtown for that team, but then forgot to revitalize everything else for everybody else. So it's not a people issue. It is just the infrastructure of that town has struggled, and it's going to continue to struggle because it's just the way when industry and all that stuff changed, right? Because Cleveland's there because of what I think it was steel, whatever that got picked up. Things changed, and there's just how do you recover from that? They're still figuring that part out, but they brought in Mayfield and said, "Here you go be a superstar." Mayfield didn't make himself a superstar. They did.
Hold
And
on. I mean,
keep in mind, people come in and they talk about the Progressive commercials, right? He's paid as an actor in the Progressive commercial. So all the times that we see like Brown Stadium and all that kind of stuff, they're making money off of it too, because they get paid for having that in there. They get paid for the team image stuff that he has in those. They're getting paid for it too. So let's not pretend that it's just him in there with that, because he has the rights to his persona. But he
okay, so
doesn't.
hold on. Hold on. They didn't give him any kind of help. Okay, so they didn't make a trade
No,
for
I
Landry.
didn't say they didn't give him help.
Del-
No, I didn't say they didn't give him help. I did not say they didn't give him help. What I said was, you're here, now go be a superstar. That's what they said to him. They brought him help. They said, here's your help. Here's your help. We're gonna get you some stuff.
Mhm.
But some of the stuff they got him, like Odell Beckham, OBJ, great receiver, as if evidenced by the fact of he played with the Rams for what, half a season, and had a significant impact. I mean, it wasn't huge, but he played a significant role in getting them a Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Not the right quarter, or not the white. He was not a match for Mayfield. He's a big name, was a big splash, just not for Mayfield. That was the issue that I had there. Was Mayfield needed somebody that's more in the lines of like Cup. Needed that, right? And he needed a big name tight end. You got him a wide receiver, and that's great. And in many, and pretty much probably 75% of other teams, right? OBJ like shines like he always does, right? It just happened to be not the best one. But it's like you gave a kid the keys to the kingdom and said, we're gonna build this stuff around you, and then got attitude for it. And it was kind of one of those where it's like everybody's sitting there, especially when because folks were hot and cold with Mayfield the whole time. Today he's a hero, and tomorrow he's a villain, right? It's not like when you look at like Manning or Tom Brady, where when he has a bad game, he had a bad game, right? Even earlier on, that bad game, he had a bad game,
He
right?
contributed to that.
No, I'm not saying he didn't. What I'm saying is you take a kid. Here's the keys to the kingdom. Today we're going to be hot. Tomorrow we're going to be cold. It's all going to focus down on you. What do we honestly expect out of that? Like
Yeah,
it's
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 like
another one of
a
those where
unstable
the
relationship.
expectations. Yeah, it's like you start off an unstable relationship and then get mad in the end when the newbie to it, the young one in it, the immature one in it, is unstable. And it's like, well, what did folks truly expect out of that? Like, think about it. Because think about this. No, here, think about this one. How many teams did Ben Roethlisberger play for?
One.
Now, tell me, in the beginning years of his career, he wasn't a hot-headed, egotistical jerk. But he had somebody that smacked him upside the back of his head and said, knock it the hell off. He didn't have somebody that said, let's go look at other quarterbacks. Here's one. You remember Vernon Davis out in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Big tight end. Really fast, great hands, could block. You put him in a situation where like Gronkowski was, where like movement Vernon Davis into Gronkowski's career, he's going to outshine Gronk. Vernon Davis just had an unfortunate thing of spending a lot of time in San Francisco, at a time where San Francisco really wasn't the end factor. And he was hot headed and he was a jerk and he had an attitude and he was just that guy. And everybody remembers. Everybody remembers. He threw a fit. Mike Singletary went over there, grabbed his helmet, and he walked around with his helmet for the rest of the game. And that was Vernon Davis's day was done. And on that day, Vernon Davis learned something very valuable, which was, wow, well, yeah, I am good. I'm one of the better players on the field. And because of my attitude, they sat me down and told me just to mind my business and shut up.
Doing too much, man. Get out of here.
And that's one of those where it's like their answer there wasn't, well, we need to find a new tight end. Right. And that's my thing. I'm not saying that Baker, that no part of this is saying that Mayfield is free of any of it. But your ownership side of it or your leadership side of it hasn't been to smack him upside the back of the head and sit down and do whatever it is. It's been, we're going to complain. And then we're going to see about finding somebody new, which is like, I mean, it's literally, you're in a marriage. You mad, you didn't cook dinner on time, so I'm going to go find another wife. Versus, hey, I start working
Take a
at 4 o'clock
break
in
for
the
a
morning.
minute.
Could we eat dinner by 6? And talking about it, communicating it, it's like, no, I'm going to go find another wife. Or even better, a lot of times, earlier on with the Browns, it was more like, I'm going to be mad about this and I'm not going to say anything at all. I'm just going to let it sit here and stew. And with the fans, it'd be akin of, husband and wife are going at it. One of their friends, one of them's being quiet, and then their friends are getting involved. And people are like, oh, well, they're just mean because they're, they were yelling at the other person's friends. And it's like, well, it's because they weren't talking, they weren't working it through. And it's like, that's the thing where it's like, I'm not saying that Mayfield is innocent in here, but looking at it like, oh, this is all his fault. Nah, if the Browns don't figure themselves out, get 2-3 years, we'll be having the same conversation about Watson because this is an issue of, yes, you've got a superstar. You still got to manage him. You have to manage him. You have to get into a spot where when he messes up, you've got to be willing to say, look, I would rather lose without this garbage than win with it. And that was the thing with Mayfield is they basically said, as long as we win, we'll deal with your garbage. At no point did they say, no, go sit down until you figure out your garbage because we'd rather lose without it. You and the garbage. And get that part set. And there's so many long-term quarterbacks, running backs, defensive backs, every player on the field that we've seen go through those type of attitude issues and getting the right coach, right leadership that is knocking them upside the head. And then they've gone on to flourish and have great careers. But in all of those situations, there was not, we need to go find somebody else. It was, we're going to dance with who brought us. And sometimes that means we're going to step on toes. And Ben Roethlisberger is just is one of those things where when he came in and when he was young, you look at his attitude, you look at his persona to when he started to when he finished, and you can see that progression. But we can look at it and say, good for you, Ben. But you have to look at everything else that went around it too. You know what I mean? It's like when you look at the support that he had, the folks that were, basically doing tough love, but the folks that were there and on his side that got him to where he is, that's the part that the Browns, either whether they tried or not, they were not successful. They really didn't put it out there, because like Roethlisberger was definitely in a situation where it was like, you could be the greatest quarterback ever, and I'll still sit you on the bench for being a butthead. And with Mayfield,
the thing is, people don't generally.
Okay, so that more sounds like a coach problem. That sounds more like a coach problem.
Aren't you a Cowboys fan?
Yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan, yes.
Who runs the Cowboys organization? I know it ain't Mike McCarthy. I know it ain't Mike McCarthy. I can promise you it is not.
We're not talking about the Cowboys right now. We're talking about.
I know we're not talking about the Cowboys, but the thing is if I own this hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars worth of basically equity and assets in a football team, I'll hire a coach to coach the team.
Hey,
That's his job, coach the team. But it's mine. It's all mine. At the end of the
hey,
day, when I come down and say, look, coach, figure out this attitude, it might be the coach that needs to be replaced because he can't handle and manage his players. That's part of the job. And part of the owner's job is to make sure those things occur.
okay, so Jerry is in a special case on his own. He has 3 Super
Oh,
Bowls,
wow.
so he's in his own
Well,
case. We're talking about the Browns.
Jerry has had a lot of success. No, wait, hold up. You're right. Jerry has had a lot of success, and we're talking about the Browns. So, in some regards, maybe they should be looking at why Jerry has had the success that he's had. And I'm gonna tell you, it's a double-edged sword, yes. But part of the success there is him keeping his thumb on the pulse of everything.
All right, let's take a quick break because I actually do want to dive in a little bit more.
It's because Sam is now confused because he's like, well, Squirt just gave a compliment to the Cowboys. He's like, he's like, I don't understand your tactics, so I'm gonna act tough until I figure it out.
You don't need to. I'm just saying we didn't need to discuss my team. We were talking about the Browns.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
All right, let's take a quick break because I want to come back in and, you started talking about Baker Mayfield, but let's talk about the potential places where he can end up. If you haven't already, click like and subscribe, and we will be right back.